Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands as he closed the hood of the old hover truck. The mining colony of Kepler 442b wasn't much to look at, just a collection of prefab buildings scattered across a rust-colored landscape under an alien sky. The twin suns cast everything in a perpetual orange glow, and the air recyclers hummed constantly to keep the atmosphere breathable for the 300 human settlers who called this place home. At 42, Marcus had seen enough of the galaxy to know that frontier worlds like this one attracted two kinds of people, those running from something, and those too stubborn to quit when the smart money said to fold. He figured he was probably both. The sound of crying caught his attention as he walked toward his small repair shop. Behind a stack of shipping containers near the landing pad, he found them. Two girls, maybe 8 and 10 years old, huddled together in clothes that had seen better days. The older one had her arms wrapped protectively around the younger, both of them shivering despite the warm air. Marcus approached slowly, the way he might approach a wounded animal. "Hey there," he said softly. "You two okay?" The older girl looked up with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. She had the distinctive pale skin and silver hair of someone from the Titan colonies, but her accent was pure earth when she spoke. "We're fine, mister. Just waiting for our transport." Marcus glanced around the empty landing pad. The last ship had departed 3 hours ago, and the next one wasn't due for 2 weeks. What transport would that be? The girl's composure cracked slightly. "The one that's supposed to take us to New Geneva. Our parents, they were on the mining platform when it..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He'd heard about the accident on Platform 7. Structural failure during a routine expansion. 14 dead, including some families. The company had swept it under the rug with remarkable efficiency, citing acceptable losses in frontier development. "What are your names?" he asked, crouching down to their level. "I'm Zara," the older girl said. "This is my sister Kaya. Our last name is Volkov." "Well, Zara and Kaya Volkov, I'm Marcus Chun. And I think maybe we should get you somewhere warm while we figure this out." Zara's protective instincts flared. "We don't need charity. We can take care of ourselves." Marcus nodded seriously. "I can see that. But even the toughest people need a place to sleep and something to eat. Consider it a temporary business arrangement. You help me around the shop, and I'll make sure you have what you need until we can contact your relatives." "We don't have any relatives," Kaya spoke for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air between them. Marcus looked at these two children, alone on a frontier world with no family and no prospects, and felt something shift inside him. He'd spent the last 5 years fixing machines and keeping to himself, avoiding the kind of complications that came with caring about people. But sometimes life doesn't give you a choice. "Well then," he said, standing up and offering them his hands. "I guess we're going to have to figure this out together." His shop was a converted shipping container with living quarters attached to the back. It wasn't much, but it was clean and functional. Marcus showed the girls the small spare room where he kept parts inventory. "We can clear this out, set up some beds. It'll be cozy, but it's yours if you want it." Over the next few days, Marcus discovered that Zara had inherited her father's gift for engineering, while Kaya possessed an almost supernatural ability to organize anything she touched. Within a week, his chaotic parts inventory had been transformed into a model of efficiency, and Zara was helping him diagnose problems with the colony's vehicles. The girls were quick learners and harder workers than most adults Marcus had known. They never complained, never asked for anything they didn't need, and somehow managed to bring a warmth to his austere living space that he hadn't realized was missing. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Kaya had nightmares about the mining platform collapse, waking up screaming about alarms and falling metal. Zara carried the weight of being the older sister with grim determination, sometimes forgetting to be a child herself. Marcus found himself learning patience he didn't know he possessed, sitting with them during the bad times and celebrating small victories during the good ones. 3 months after the girls arrived, Colonial Administrator Harrison paid Marcus a visit. Harrison was a thin, officious man who seemed to view human emotions as inefficiencies in his bureaucratic machine. "Mr. Chen, we need to discuss the situation with the Volkov children." Marcus didn't look up from the engine he was working on. "What situation would that be?" "They can't stay here indefinitely. The colonial charter has specific provisions for orphaned minors. They need to be transported to New Geneva for proper placement in approved facilities. They're doing fine here." "That's not the point. You're not an approved guardian. You have no legal standing to care for these children. The next transport to New Geneva leaves in 2 days." Marcus straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. Harrison was technically right, of course. The colonial bureaucracy had procedures for everything, including what happened to orphan children on frontier worlds. But Marcus had seen those approved facilities on New Geneva. Warehouses for unwanted kids, preparing them for a life of indentured service to whatever corporation needed cheap labor. "I'd like to apply for guardianship," Marcus said. Harrison's laugh was cold. "Mr. Chen, you're a drifter with no permanent address, no steady income, and no family connections. Your background check shows a dishonorable discharge from Earth Navy and a history of avoiding long-term commitments. What makes you think you're qualified to raise 2 children?" Marcus felt his temper rise but kept his voice level. "The fact that I'm the only one here who seems to give a damn what happens to them. Your sentiments are admirable but irrelevant. The law is clear. The children will be on that transport." That night, Marcus sat with Zara and Kea on the small porch behind his shop, watching the twin suns set over the barren landscape. He'd explained the situation as gently as he could, but Zara was too smart not to understand what it meant. "We could run," she said quietly. "Hide in the caves beyond the settlement until the transport leaves." Marcus shook his head. "They'd just send another one. And, eventually, you'd be caught. That would only make things worse." Kaya leaned against his shoulder. "Will you come visit us?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "If I can, kiddo. If I can." The next morning, Marcus worked frantically on a plan. He contacted every lawyer he could reach on the colonial networks, looking for some legal avenue to keep the girls with him. He called in favors from old Navy contacts, hoping someone might know a way around the bureaucracy. He even considered more desperate measures, like booking passage on a freight hauler to get them all off-world before the transport arrived. Nothing worked. The system was designed to be efficient, not compassionate. By the time the transport ship descended through Kepler 442b's thin atmosphere, Marcus had exhausted every option. The ship was a standard colonial passenger transport, all function and no form. Marcus helped the girls pack their few belongings, his heart breaking a little more with each item they folded into their small bags. Zara maintained her stoic composure, but Kea cried openly. At the landing pad, Administrator Harrison supervised the transfer with bureaucratic efficiency. "This is for the best, Mr. Chen. Children need stability, proper education, social interaction with their peers." Marcus knelt down and pulled both girls into a fierce hug. "I want you to remember something," he said quietly. "You're stronger than you know, and smarter than anyone will give you credit for. Take care of each other, and don't let anyone tell you what you're worth." Zara looked up at him with those two old eyes. "We won't forget you, Marcus. We promise." As the transport lifted off, carrying the 2 most important people in his world away from him, Marcus Chen made a decision. He couldn't fight the system, but he could make sure he was ready the next time it tried to crush someone he cared about. He would build something better than a repair shop on a frontier world. He would build the kind of life that bureaucrats couldn't dismiss, the kind of resources that couldn't be ignored. It took him 6 months to liquidate his assets on Kepler 442b. He sold his shop, his equipment, and everything else of value. With the credits in hand, he booked passage to the core worlds, where opportunities were larger and the stakes were higher. Marcus had always been good with machines, but he'd never applied himself to anything bigger than keeping colony vehicles running. That changed now. He enrolled in advanced engineering courses, studying ship design and quantum mechanics with the intensity of a man possessed. He worked 16-hour days in shipyards and tech companies, learning everything he could about how the galaxy's technology really worked. Within 2 years, he'd earned his master's certification in Starship engineering. Within 4, he'd designed improvements to standard drive systems that increased efficiency by 12%. Within 6, he owned a small but growing company specializing in custom modifications for independent traders and exploration vessels. But Marcus Chen Dynamics was just the beginning. Marcus had learned that in the galaxy's current political climate, individual success meant nothing without the right connections. He cultivated relationships with influential people, not through charm or social graces, but by being indispensable. When Senator Rodriguez needed her personal yacht modified to outrun pirates, Marcus delivered ahead of schedule and under budget. When Admiral Singh wanted experimental shielding for his Black Ops missions, Marcus developed technology that exceeded specifications. Every success built on the last one. Every favor earned him more influence. Every innovation brought him closer to his goal, becoming the kind of person that bureaucrats like Harrison couldn't simply dismiss. He never forgot why he was doing this. In his private office, he kept a picture of 2 girls in patched clothes, smiling despite everything the galaxy had thrown at them. Zara and Kaya Volkov, wherever they were, had given him something he'd never had before, a purpose beyond his own survival. By his 10th year in the core worlds, Marcus Chen Dynamics had grown into one of the most respected independent shipyards in human space. His innovations in drive technology and defensive systems had made him wealthy, but, more importantly, they'd made him influential. He served on advisory committees for colonial development, testified before Senate subcommittees on frontier policy, and quietly funded legal challenges to the worst abuses of the corporate colonial system. But he still hadn't found them. Despite all his resources and connections, Zara and Kaya Volkov had vanished into the bureaucratic maze of the colonial system. The facility on New Geneva where they'd been sent had closed 3 years after their arrival, its records transferred to a corporate database that suffered a convenient data corruption incident when Marcus tried to access it. He'd hired private investigators, called in favors from intelligence contacts, and even funded humanitarian organizations that worked to reconnect separated families. Nothing. It was as if the 2 girls had simply ceased to exist after stepping aboard the transport 12 years ago. Marcus tried to tell himself that they were probably fine. That they'd found new families, new lives, new purposes. That they were out there somewhere, grown up and happy and better off than they would have been staying with a broken-down mechanic on a frontier world. But, late at night, when the weight of his success felt hollow and meaningless, he wondered if he'd failed them in the most fundamental way possible. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd built an empire to protect 2 children, only to discover that his empire couldn't find them in the first place. Marcus stood in the observation deck of his flagship workshop, the Forge, watching his engineering teams work on the latest commission. The ship being assembled below was a beauty, a custom exploration vessel for a wealthy collector who wanted to hunt for artifacts in the Outer Rim. Advanced sensors, experimental shielding, and enough firepower to discourage pirates. It was the kind of project that would have been impossible 12 years ago, when he was just another mechanic trying to survive on a frontier world. The comlink on his desk chimed with an urgent priority signal. Marcus frowned as he recognized the encryption code, Military Black Ops, highest classification. Only 3 people in the galaxy had the authority to contact him through that channel, and none of them did so lightly. Chun here. Marcus, this is Admiral Singh. We have a situation that requires your immediate attention. Marcus had known Rajesh Singh for 8 years, ever since designing the stealth modifications for his intelligence ships. The Admiral was not prone to dramatics, which made the tension in his voice all the more concerning. What kind of situation? The kind that could destabilize human space if it goes wrong. I need you to drop everything and get to the Centauri system as fast as possible. Bring your best people and whatever experimental tech you have available. Marcus glanced at the work schedule displayed on his wall screen. Canceling current projects would cost his company millions of credits and damage relationships with several important clients. Rajesh, you know I don't do military contracts anymore. Not after what happened with the Titan incident. This isn't a military contract. This is a favor to humanity. Singh paused, and, when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that Marcus had rarely heard. We've made first contact, Marcus. And, it's not going well. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. First contact with an alien species was something humanity had been preparing for since they first reached the stars, but it had always seemed like a distant possibility. Theoretical. Academic. The galaxy was vast, and, in 3 centuries of expansion, humans had found plenty of habitable worlds but no signs of intelligent life. Tell me everything. Not over this channel. Just get here. I'll send you the coordinates and clearance codes. And, Marcus? Bring the Prometheus drive. The connection ended, leaving Marcus staring at the comlink in his hand. The Prometheus drive was his most closely guarded secret, an experimental faster-than-light system that could cut travel time between star systems by 60%. Only 3 prototypes existed, and none had been tested outside of controlled conditions. If Singh was asking for it, the situation was even worse than his tone suggested. Marcus activated his personal assistant AI. Diana, clear my schedule for the next month. Cancel all non-essential meetings and delegate current projects to the department heads. And prep the Pegasus for immediate departure. Sir, that will cost the company approximately, I don't care what it costs. Just do it. Within 6 hours, Marcus was aboard his personal ship, the Pegasus, streaking toward the Centauri system at maximum velocity. The ship was a masterpiece of engineering, incorporating every innovation his company had developed over the past decade. It was fast, well-armed, and equipped with the most advanced sensors money could buy. But, as Marcus sat in his cabin during the 3-day journey, he couldn't shake the feeling that nothing in his arsenal would be adequate for whatever was waiting for him. The Centauri system was in chaos when he arrived. Military ships from every major human faction crowded the space around Proxima Centauri b, their weapons powered but not yet aimed at each other. That was something, at least. In the center of the formation sat something that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. The alien ship was massive, easily twice the size of the largest human dreadnought, but its design was unlike anything in human archives. Instead of the angular, utilitarian lines of human engineering, the vessel seemed to flow like liquid metal, its surface rippling with patterns of light that suggested intelligence behind the design. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Admiral Singh's flagship, the Prometheus, hailed the Pegasus as soon as Marcus dropped out of hyperspace. Marcus, thank God you made it. Dock with us immediately. We've got about 12 hours before this whole situation goes to hell. The briefing room aboard the Prometheus was packed with the most senior military and political figures in human space. Marcus recognized most of them from news feeds and government hearings: General Martinez from Earth Defense Command, Senator Chen from the Colonial Authority, Director Walsh from Intelligence. All of them looked like they hadn't slept in days. Admiral Singh gestured to a holographic display showing the alien vessel. They arrived 3 days ago, broadcasting a message in perfect standard English. No demands, no threats, just a simple request for a meeting to discuss matters of mutual concern. Our xenolinguistics experts are baffled by how they learned our language. What kind of matters? Marcus asked. Director Walsh leaned forward. That's what we're trying to figure out. They won't elaborate over communications. They insist on a face-to-face meeting, but they have specific requirements for who they'll talk to. Let me guess, they want our political leaders. No, Senator Chen said, and her voice carried a note of confusion that made Marcus uneasy. They asked for you specifically. The room fell silent as Marcus processed this information. That's impossible. I've never had contact with any alien species. Hell, until 3 days ago, we didn't even know alien species existed. Admiral Singh nodded grimly. That's what makes this so concerning. They know your name, Marcus. They know about your company, your ships, even details about your past that aren't in any public records. When they transmitted their meeting request, they specifically asked for Marcus Chen of the world called Kepler 442b. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He hadn't used his connection to Kepler 442b in any official capacity for over a decade. Most people who knew him now had no idea he'd ever lived on a frontier mining colony. How could aliens possibly know about that part of his past? There's more, Director Walsh added. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected at least 6 other ships of similar design moving toward human space. They're not approaching in an aggressive formation, but they're clearly coordinated. If this meeting goes badly, the implication hung in the air. Humanity was facing its first contact with an alien species, and, somehow, Marcus Chen was at the center of it. The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders like a physical burden. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Admiral Singh activated another holographic display, this one showing technical specifications. They've agreed to meet on neutral ground, a space station they're constructing at the edge of the system. But they insist that you arrive in a ship equipped with what they call the new drive system. We think they're referring to your Prometheus drive. Marcus studied the alien station taking shape in the display. It was smaller than their main ship but still impressive, its flowing lines suggesting the same aesthetic principles. How do they know about the Prometheus drive? That technology is classified at the highest levels. We don't know, Director Walsh said. But they seem to know a lot of things they shouldn't. The question is whether you're willing to take the risk. Marcus thought about the 2 girls he'd failed to protect 12 years ago, about all the other people who might suffer if this first contact went wrong. Humanity had spent centuries expanding into the galaxy, believing they were alone. The discovery that they weren't changed everything, and not necessarily in a good way. If these aliens had hostile intentions, humanity needed every advantage it could get. "I'll do it," he said. "But I want full autonomy during the negotiations. No political oversight, no military interference. If they specifically asked for me, then I need to be able to respond without worrying about stepping on someone's bureaucratic toes." The politicians in the room exchanged glances. Senator Chen spoke first. "Mr. Chen, you understand that this is first contact with an alien species." The political ramifications are exactly why I need autonomy," Marcus interrupted. "Politicians think in terms of constituencies and election cycles. Military officers think in terms of tactics and strategic advantage. Right now, we need someone who can think like an engineer, analyze the problem, understand the variables, and find a solution that works." Admiral Singh nodded slowly. "He's right. Besides, if these aliens wanted to destroy us, they probably wouldn't have asked for a polite meeting first. We have to assume they have some other agenda." It took another 4 hours of heated debate before the assembled leaders agreed to Marcus's terms. By then, the alien station was nearly complete, a graceful spiral of exotic materials that seemed to bend light around its edges. The aliens had transmitted detailed docking procedures and safety protocols, all written in flawless standard English with technical specifications that suggested they understood human technology better than most humans did. Marcus spent his remaining time studying every piece of data intelligence had gathered about the alien ship and its occupants. The vessel's energy signatures were unlike anything in human databases, suggesting technology that operated on principles humanity hadn't discovered. The materials analysis showed elements that didn't exist in Earth's periodic table. Most unsettling of all, the ship's movements suggested artificial gravity and inertial compensation systems that far exceeded human capabilities. Whoever these aliens were, they were centuries ahead of humanity in technological development. If they wanted to destroy human civilization, they probably could have done so before humanity even knew they existed. The fact that they were asking for a meeting instead suggested something else entirely. They wanted something that required human cooperation. As Marcus prepared the Pegasus for the most important meeting in human history, he couldn't shake the feeling that his past on Kepler 442b was somehow connected to all of this. The aliens' specific knowledge of his background, their insistence on meeting with him personally, the timing of their arrival just as his search for Zara and Kaya had reached another dead end, it all felt too coincidental to be random. Whatever these aliens wanted, Marcus had the uncomfortable suspicion that it was connected to 2 orphan girls he'd tried to save 12 years ago. The question was whether that connection would save humanity or doom it. The alien station was even more impressive up close. As the Pegasus approached the docking bay, Marcus could see the impossible complexity of its construction, materials that seemed to shift between states of matter, energy conduits that formed geometric patterns too perfect for random chance, and structural elements that curved through dimensions his human eyes couldn't quite process. The Prometheus drive had performed flawlessly during the journey, but Marcus barely noticed. His attention was entirely focused on the meeting ahead. The docking sequence proceeded smoothly, guided by automated systems that interfaced with the Pegasus's computers as if they'd been designed for each other. As soon as the airlock sealed, Marcus felt a subtle vibration through the ship's hull that told him artificial gravity had been extended to his vessel. The technology required for that kind of precise field manipulation was staggering. Marcus had spent the journey preparing for every contingency he could imagine, but nothing had prepared him for what he found when the airlock opened. Standing on the other side was a woman in her early 20s with pale skin and silver hair that caught the station's ambient light like spun metal. Her eyes were the same shade of gray he remembered from a cold morning 12 years ago, when two frightened girls had cried behind shipping containers on a frontier world. "Hello, Marcus," Zara Volkov said, her voice carrying the same quiet strength he remembered, but deeper now, aged by experience and knowledge. "Thank you for coming." Marcus felt his knees go weak. For a moment, he couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at the young woman who had haunted his thoughts for over a decade. She wore clothes that seemed to be cut from the same flowing materials as the station itself, and there was something in her posture that suggested familiarity with technologies beyond human understanding. "Zara?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "How is this possible? Where's Kaya? What is this place?" Zara stepped forward and, to Marcus's amazement, pulled him into the same fierce hug he remembered from their childhood. For a moment, she was just the 8-year-old girl who had tried to take care of her little sister in an uncaring universe. Then, she stepped back, and Marcus could see the weight of knowledge in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Kaya is here, waiting for us. And this is home, Marcus. Or one of them." She gestured around the impossible architecture of the station. "We have so much to tell you, and not very much time to do it. The Council is getting impatient." "Council?" "The Galactic Coordination Council. They've been watching humanity for a long time, waiting to see if your species was ready for contact. Your kind calls it first contact, but, for the rest of the galaxy, it's more like an entrance exam." Marcus followed Zara through corridors that seemed to bend space itself, passing viewports that showed impossible vistas of stars arranged in patterns that defied physics. Other figures moved through the station, beings that were clearly not human but also not entirely alien. Some had the flowing grace of the architecture around them, while others looked almost human except for subtle differences in proportion or coloration. "Zara, I need to understand what happened to you. Where you've been. How you're connected to all this." She paused at an intersection where the corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with floating platforms and holographic displays. In the center of the space, a familiar figure turned toward them. Kaya had grown as well, her childhood awkwardness transformed into the same flowing grace as her sister. But, where Zara carried herself with the weight of responsibility, Kaya radiated an almost infectious joy. "Marcus!" She launched herself across the intervening space with a movement that suggested comfortable familiarity with low gravity, wrapping him in a hug that nearly knocked him off his feet. "We've been waiting so long for this moment." "Waiting for what moment?" "Girls, I've been searching for you for 12 years. I thought you were lost in the colonial system, maybe dead. How did you end up here?" Zara and Kaya exchanged a look that carried the weight of shared experience Marcus couldn't begin to understand. Kaya took his hand and led him to one of the floating platforms, which immediately began to rise toward an alcove filled with soft seating that molded itself to accommodate human physiology. "Do you remember," Zara asked, settling into a chair that seemed to anticipate her movements, "that night before the transport came? You told us we were stronger than we knew, smarter than anyone would give us credit for?" Marcus nodded, his throat tight with remembered pain. "You were right," Kaya said. "But not in the way any of us expected. The facility on New Geneva wasn't what the administrators thought it was. It was a testing ground. Testing for what? For humans who might be compatible with galactic civilization, Zara explained. Marcus, humanity isn't the first species to reach the stars. You're not even the first to reach this level of technological development. But, you are the first to do it the way you did. The platform came to rest in an observation lounge that offered a panoramic view of space. Through the transparent walls, Marcus could see the alien ships arranged in careful formation around the human fleet. Both sides maintained peaceful postures, but the tension was obvious. Most species, Kaya continued, develop faster than light travel through cooperation with galactic civilization. They make contact, they're evaluated, and, if they pass certain criteria, they're given access to established trade routes and technologies. It's been that way for thousands of years. But, humanity did it alone, Zara said. You developed your own FTL drives, your own weapons, your own colonial infrastructure. You spread across dozens of star systems without any outside help. The Council has never seen anything like it. Marcus was beginning to understand, and he didn't like where this was leading. So they've been watching us. Studying us. Testing random human children to see if we're worth talking to. Not random, Kaya said gently. Specific children who showed certain characteristics. Adaptability, intelligence, empathy under stress. Children who had survived trauma and found ways to thrive anyway. The orphans from frontier worlds, Marcus realized. They weren't being sent to facilities for adoption. They were being recruited. Zara nodded. The Council needed humans who could serve as intermediaries. People who understood both human nature and galactic civilization. But it had to be voluntary, and it had to be people who had already demonstrated the qualities galactic civilization values most. Which are the same qualities you showed when you found two scared children behind a shipping container, Kaya said. Compassion without expectation of reward. Willingness to sacrifice for others. Determination to protect the vulnerable even when the system says it's not your responsibility. Marcus felt a mix of pride and rage that left him momentarily speechless. Pride that the girls had thrived, that they'd found purpose and meaning beyond anything the colonial bureaucracy could have provided. Rage that they'd been taken from him, that their disappearance had been orchestrated by alien manipulators who saw human children as potential resources. So you've been studying galactic civilization for 12 years, he said finally. Learning their technologies, their customs, their politics. And, now you're what, ambassadors? Among other things, Zara said. But, Marcus, you have to understand, the Council isn't evil. They're not trying to exploit humanity. They're trying to prevent a war. What war? Kaya activated a holographic display that filled the space around them with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of stars were marked with different colored symbols, representing different species and political affiliations. But, near the edge of the display, Marcus could see a growing cluster of red symbols that seemed to be expanding toward the core worlds. The hegemony, Zara said, her voice carrying a note of fear that Marcus had never heard from her before. They're what happens when a species develops space travel through conquest instead of cooperation. They've been consuming civilizations on the galactic rim for 3 centuries, growing stronger with each victory. They're maybe 50 years away from human space, Kaya added. When they arrive, they won't be interested in negotiations or treaties. They'll want your technology, your resources, and your people. In that order. Marcus studied the display, his engineer's mind automatically calculating distances and timelines. If the red symbols represented the hegemony's current position, and if they were advancing at the rate the map suggested, humanity had very little time to prepare for contact with an aggressively expansionist alien empire. So the Council wants to recruit humanity as allies against the hegemony? More than that, Zara said. They want to offer humanity full membership in galactic civilization. Access to technologies that are centuries ahead of your current capabilities. Trade agreements that would eliminate scarcity on human worlds. Scientific cooperation that could solve problems your species hasn't even discovered yet. In exchange for? Fighting, Kaya said simply. Humans are the only species in the galaxy that developed their own military traditions without outside influence. Your tactical thinking, your willingness to take risks, your ability to adapt under pressure, these are exactly the qualities the Council needs to stop the hegemony. Marcus looked at his adopted daughters, and he realized that's what they were, regardless of the legal technicalities, and saw the weight they'd been carrying. They weren't just ambassadors or intermediaries. They were the bridge between two civilizations that needed each other more than either side fully understood. What happens if humanity says no? Zara and Kaya exchanged another look. The Council withdraws their offer and seals the borders around human space. You're left to face the hegemony alone when they arrive. And if we say yes? Then, humanity becomes part of something larger than any single species has ever achieved, Kaya said. But, it also means accepting that Earth is no longer the center of human existence. It means sharing the galaxy with beings whose motivations and cultures are sometimes incomprehensible. It means growing up as a species, with all the opportunities and responsibilities that entails. Marcus stood up and walked to the observation wall, looking out at the human fleet arrayed in the distance. Those ships represented the best of human engineering, the culmination of centuries of technological development and exploration. But, compared to the alien vessel that had constructed this station in a matter of days, they looked primitive, almost quaint. The Council asked for me specifically because they wanted someone who would understand what they're really offering, he realized. Not just technology or military alliance, but a chance for humanity to become something more than what we are. And, because they wanted someone we trusted, Zara said, joining him at the window. Someone who would listen to what we had to say and believe that we're still the same people you tried to protect 12 years ago. Marcus turned to look at the two women who had once been frightened children in his care. They had grown into something remarkable, human in their core values and emotions, but expanded by exposure to a wider universe of possibilities. They were what humanity could become if it chose to embrace the challenge ahead. What do you think I should tell them? He asked. Kaya smiled, and, for a moment she was 10 years old again, organizing his chaotic parts inventory with boundless enthusiasm. We think you should tell them the truth. That humans are scared, suspicious, and probably not ready for any of this. But, that when you care about something enough, you find ways to be ready anyway. Marcus looked out at the human fleet one more time, then activated his personal communicator. Admiral Singh's voice crackled through the connection with barely contained tension. Marcus, what's your status? We're reading some unusual energy signatures from the station. Rajesh, I need you to establish a secure channel to Earth, New Terra, and the Colonial Authority. Get me the highest-ranking official from each faction who has the authority to speak for humanity. Marcus, what did you find in there? Marcus looked at Zara and Kaya, seeing not just the remarkable women they had become, but the children they had been and the future they represented. Humanity was about to face the greatest decision in its history, and, somehow, it all traced back to a simple choice he had made 12 years ago, whether to help two scared children who had nowhere else to turn. I found out that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is exactly what feels right in the moment, Marcus said. And that the galaxy is a lot more complicated than we thought, but maybe not more complicated than we can handle. Patch me through to the fleet commanders, Rajesh. It's time for humanity to grow up. As Marcus prepared to deliver the most important briefing in human history, he felt a hand slip into his. Kaya squeezed gently, the same gesture of comfort she'd used as a child when nightmares about falling platforms made sleep impossible. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. For taking us in, for never giving up on finding us, for becoming the kind of person the galaxy needs right now. Marcus squeezed back, looking out at the impossible vista of space that no longer seemed quite so empty or hostile. Somewhere out there, an expanding empire threatened everything humanity had built. But, also out there was a community of civilizations that had been waiting for centuries for the right ally to help them preserve what they valued most. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds with nothing but determination and the conviction that some things were worth fighting for. In 12 years, that conviction had transformed a broken-down mechanic into one of the most influential people in human space. In the same 12 years, it had transformed 2 orphan children into bridges between civilizations. Now it was time to see what that same conviction could do for humanity's future among the stars. The galaxy was vast and dangerous and full of wonders beyond human imagination. But, as Marcus began the conversation that would change everything, he knew that humanity would face whatever came next the same way they had always faced the impossible, together, with stubborn determination and an unwavering belief that everyone deserved a chance to find something better. Sometimes the most important decisions started with the simplest choices, whether to help someone who needed it, whether to take responsibility for those who couldn't protect themselves, whether to believe that kindness was a strength rather than a weakness. 12 years ago, Marcus Chen had made such a choice. Today, humanity would make one that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come.